Alright, everybody, I'm going to just take a walk through Greg Maddux in one of his videos, a highlight reel of him, and just make some comments. So, typically, you hear people talk about Greg Maddux, and you hear that he has arguably the best mechanics ever. And so I'm just going to make some comments on what I think is actually happening. So, we know that early in his career, he was throwing relatively hard, so low to mid 90s, and then in the later part of his career he didn't throw as hard and was still effective. So we have him when he was playing for the Braves, and at this point it's very obvious to see how much he gains from hip and shoulder separation. Right? So his back hip getting ahead of his back shoulder. It's very obvious that that's happening. If we had a side view, people that talk about short arming typically don't talk about it in the way that makes sense, because if you see him from the side right now, his hand is very close to his head, so he has a lot of flexion. If you can imagine a 90-degree angle in his arm right now, it's much less than that, much closer to call it a 65-degree angle in his throwing arm. So a lot of people call that short arming, and it has a negative connotation, and that's just not an accurate representation of what happens. Good throwers often put themselves in that angle that's less than 90, and that's a really good way to get your arm to lay back in the way that in the way that you'd want it to. So outside of his ability to command his pitches, a lot of it just comes down to the fact that he created really good hip and shoulder separation. We say he was smooth, but he was creating speed down the mound. So when we look at his lower half right here, it's moving down the mound this entire time. He's moving forward here, he's moving forward here, and a lot of throwers don't do these things. And he loads his arm, he cocks his arm and gets it ready at that last second. And that's one of the biggest things I see being a misconception in coaching and in, I guess, learning, is that kids or coaches feel the need to get your arm loaded sooner than it needs to, and it's very obvious when you watch, so-called the best thrower ever. From a mechanics standpoint, he's loading his arm as late as possible. So my point is this: I have heard, and before I even heard this, it's Greg Maddux could have absolutely thrown harder, especially later in his career. He's a guy who had really good mobility. The fact that he can do this, where his hips are ahead of his shoulders, as late into his career as he did, is a testament to his ability to just have flexibility. Look at Bartolo Colon. We all look at him as that fat pitcher who can't swing a bat, but I've heard or read how flexible and athletic he is. So, you know, the one thing, my claim that he could throw so much harder, is Greg Maddux didn't have to work hard to do this. He was good at his craft, but from an actual training regimen, I know from people that were very close to him that he wasn't the hardest worker when it came to the weight room. He didn't get after it like a lot of the players that I talked to who played professionally. So my point is this. This is the fundamental movement of throwing a baseball. Can you get your hips ahead of your shoulders? There are many limitations to your ability to do this. Some people are very tightly wound. Some people are really flexible but don't have the athleticism or explosiveness to do this. At the end of the day, if conceptually you're trying to do this, there's a good chance you're going to be having some success. But if you think that getting your arm loaded early is going to help you throw strikes, I hope this is helpful in seeing that that's not what's happening. If you watch his left foot, his foot's coming down and his arm is cocking very late. So my goal in this video is just to open your eyes to some of the things that people are doing, but at the same time, this guy, I mean, Nolan Ryan worked his butt off to throw as hard as he did for as long as he did. I get the impression that Greg Maddux did not do that, which is fine because he was able to be successful because at the end of the day, he had really good hip and shoulder separation. And we know that 80% of velocity can be attributed to hip and shoulder separation. So if you can do this, great. If you can't, you're going to have to work harder than other people that can naturally do this as well as he did. So hopefully this is helpful. Please send any questions to me, Cass, at cksoda@gmail.com.